So we have the recording for posterity. There we go. Okay.
Well, welcome everybody. I am very excited about where this is going to go. Like all of you, I don't really know. I have some plans, but they are based on this group. And I'm so excited for where this is going to go. In good Jewish fashion, I'm going to start with a story, not my own. Okay.
Oh, I love her.
Yes. This is Rabbi Angela Bookdahl. She's a senior rabbi at Central Synagogue, the biggest Reform synagogue in New York City. I put her visual up because it's very important for this story. From a very young age, she knew she was going to be a rabbi. From a very young age, in her teens. And she never questioned it. Nothing about the way she looked or lived her life or her background ever told her as a young person that that might be an uphill climb. In her young years, starting at around age, I think 14, she went to Israel on different programs and fellowships. And always she was struck in the US, she didn't really face this as much as in Israel, but she was not actually seen as legally or halachically Jewish by many people she came across, and that was new for her. So she had somewhat of an existential Jewish identity crisis on her third visit to Israel, where she was already in her 20s, I believe, about to graduate from college and already knowing she wanted to become a rabbi. She says, quote, that she was hitting lots of walls of identity. That being as it was, she still decided that she is who she is, and it was very important for her to give herself an aliyah for the Torah at the wall with a women's group. So she called herself up, and in her words, I screwed up the words at the moment. Couldn't remember them. All the women corrected me. She said she felt like a massive failure. For her, it was a breaking point. She called her mother. This was in the days where you put a lot of money into the phone to call and you didn't waste a lot of time. And she said she spent 5 minutes just sobbing. She couldn't even say anything. Her mother was the Korean in the family. She's Korean, female, Asian. So she called her mother, spent 5 minutes sobbing, and finally choked out the words. She says to her mother, I was done with Judaism, done with being Jewish. She says, I could just stop being Jewish. I don't have a Jewish face. I don't have a Jewish name. Nobody would even know. People wouldn't even care if I stopped being a Jew. And her Korean mother says, is that really possible? That was my story.
Is that from her autobiography, which was just published?
Yes.
Yeah. You know, things happen in threes or fours. You sent me her Rosh Hashanah, and then my best friend from college joined Central Synagogue, and on the second day she was up there next to her, singing with the choir of the Matovu. So I looked at it, and then I heard, you know, their whole deal, and they did a story on her on like 60 Minutes or something, like 10, 12 years ago. But she's really in the zeitgeist right now.
Yep. That's part of why we are also here as a group. There's something going on in the Jewish world, in the Jewish adult world, that we are all part of, even though we're very far removed. And to that end, Yehuda, I would like you to introduce the concept that you came up with. Let me share hold on a minute. See, that fell off my thing. I have to find it again, and then I will share the screen. Okay, now, just a moment. There. Okay, Yehuda, your mic on?
Everybody, welcome to Judaism 101. This is the way we are conceiving this class. We are trying to create for each other a safe learning space and learning environment where we can each learn from each other and explore in as much depth as we choose to the nature of Judaism in our lives. To start that, we thought that we would start by having a conversation. So today, all we are going to do is put a number of questions. I think there are 4 or 5 questions that we will put up. And we ask that each of you look at the question and spend just a minute or two, since there's so many of us, and we do have 5 questions, just spend a minute or two to give us an answer. No one's requiring that you speak, but everyone who does speak is just adding to the conversation. So I will tell you my nature, my Jewishness, and my Jewish connection. I'm the son of a rabbi. I had no choice. My father was a Holocaust survivor, and I grew up in a very Jewish household. My uncle's a famous rabbi who wrote the Torah version that's used by the Reform movement throughout the United States and Canada. I had a first cousin who was a rabbi, alav shalom, and my brother is a rabbi. And I rejected it out of hand. I didn't really want to go there, but now I've embraced Jewish study.
Vic? Oh, no, Vic's on the phone. Okay, someone else.
Couldn't count on me to go. I wasn't sure I was going to make it because it's 11 o'clock for me. So if I doze off, I apologize. But, you know, when you were doing this, I thought, oh, what if you were just going to have an open discussion? And I constantly come back to this question they asked us in Hebrew high school, you know, the 10th grade. So cutesy. Are you a Jewish American or an American Jew? You know, and I quote that all the time because being a Jew in the diaspora in this time, and now as you're saying, in this particular time, we're constantly being asked to question that. And it's so multi-level because obviously genetically I'm a Jew. And more I sense, just like with the rabbi, there's something, you know, ineffable but integral. You know, it's part of your essence. You can't you can't really deny it, even if you want to. I'll give another little example, not directly with me, but to what you said, because you know Rabbi Suzanne, who was in Sherry's class, you know, and I don't know her whole story. She starts as a cantor, and she's an alternative Jewish community rabbi. And this is her second marriage. Her husband isn't Jewish. Most of her children.
Your story.
Okay, my story.
Yeah.
Right, that's it. It's just one quick thing, only that her daughter went for screening for cancer, you know, and then all of a sudden she just had this epiphany. The daughter, who's not observant, she says, "But I am a Jew. I cannot deny that I'm a Jew." So I'm sorry, yeah.
Okay. So Ruth Ellen, I'm writing just down a couple of things from what each one is saying. And one of the things you mentioned, genetically a Jew, is something that's gonna come up. We're building a curriculum based on
Tonight's
what we're
building
sharing
the
today.
curriculum. All the subjects that you guys bring up end up being in the curriculum.
Yeah. All right, someone else?
Put the question back on the screen, please.
Okay.
I'll speak.
Yeah.
So, I was raised Jewish, and I know as I got to be an adult, I had my little bit of straying for a while, and then I ended up finding that the Jewish was at my core, and I had to just embrace it again and come back to it because that's where I felt most at home with. That's all.
I can speak.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was bar mitzvahed in 1960, and ever since that time, I was the kind of Jew who had Passover, observed Passover every year and every high holiday. And so I brought my daughter up that way. But it wasn't until October 7th when I suddenly, I don't know, like a bolt of lightning went through me. And suddenly I showed up for services, you know, at, at this synagogue. And so it, it's um, it's become more than just, you know, doing Passover and high holidays. It's been it's just been sort of finding some uh, some person, some getting together with other people who have similar interests. That was always new. That was new, and I'm sure I have more, but that's
There are
that's what
another
I'll say.
4 more questions.
What's that?
There are 4 more questions
Oh, what are the what?
later.
Okay.
Can people see each other on the screen? Does everyone know how to put everyone on if they want to see other people on the screen?
I flick back and forth. I want to see
Okay.
the question. I go one way and then back to see the people.
Okay, Courtney has her hand raised. Go ahead, Courtney.
So how I would answer this question is in this past couple years, I've shifted in a realization. And I had always felt like your beliefs were very personal. It's your relationship with God, it's your meditation, it's your self-reflection, and it was a very inward conversation with yourself. And in the past year or two, I still feel that way, but also acknowledge that there's a weaving or a dance between when you're in that mental realm and when it opens up to a community space. Like, for example, here right now, this evening, we're in a community space. And so to answer this question, it's identifying when are you in this self-reflective conversation and when are you sharing amongst community.
Wow.
I can say something.
Yeah, go ahead, Eva.
Oh, I forgot the question. What is the what was could you read the first part of your
Yeah.
question again?
What is the nature of your Jewishness, or what is your Jewish connection?
I have 2. The nature of my Jewishness has, growing up and until I was 30, was cultural. In Brooklyn and in my neighborhood, you just were a Jew. And that's just, you know, I knew very early who I was. The second, so it's cultural and it's values. I put the values under cultural. And until I moved upstate New York from Brooklyn and I was away from the Jewish community, that's the first time I was active in the synagogue and really became more involved with services and enjoying them. But I would have to say one of my huge connections is that both of my parents are Holocaust survivors. And so I was cultural becoming, I regret that I'm not more knowledgeable. Sometimes I say I'm going to try. I have a bit with KBS. I'm muting myself now so I don't make sure I don't speak.
All right.
Mhm.
Who's next?
I'd like to say something because it's absolutely so different than everybody else here. And that is that I did not grow up Jewish. I grew up and in a Protestant but unreligious household. And then when I was in college, I met Alan, and to tell you the truth, I had problems with Christianity because I really didn't like what they said about, you know, you had to believe that in Christ, and everybody else, at least that sect that I was in, I just had a lot of problems with that. And so when I got to college, where there was a lot of Jews, and my two friends that I made right away were Jewish, and we had a lot of talks, and then of course I met Alan, and fell in love with Alan, and we did a lot of talking. We knew each other for 5 years before we got married. And so there was a lot of talking back and forth about what it meant to be Jewish, and even talking about Alan being a Christian, or would I be a Jew, and could we both be different? And we both came up with the idea that, first of all, I didn't have a real strong Christian feeling. And the other thing was, we just felt like if we were going to raise a family, it should be in one religion. And so I've been learning my whole life. I don't have a background of living among Jews or anything like that, or to know. So all my Jewish experiences have been through our synagogues as we've grown older.
And I'll follow up on that because where I came from, and I was interested to hear Eva, because I was on the other side of the Hudson, or as my grandmother might say, a Vienenseit Sambatjan. But the household I came from was no doubt a Jewish household. We had Jewish culture, read Shalom Aleichem and Ayel Peretz, and I went to Yiddish school, but it was not a religious home. Never went to services with my parents. My dad worked through all the holidays. My mother said I could stay. I could stay out of school on Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur. It wasn't Yom Kippur back then. It was Yom Kippur. But she said the only way I could stay out of school was if I went to services, and nobody in the family would go to services with me. And I didn't know what I'd do anyway, because I never really knew about services, and still have a lot to learn, or at least have learned a lot over the years about what's involved in a service. But the religious aspect was never part of my background. It was more cultural, more a heritage. I hear people like Eva mention being the child of Holocaust survivors, and I'm the grandchild of people who were lost in the Holocaust. But when I remember going to Yiddish school, one of the images that stayed with me was a sign. It was a black painted sign with gold letters that said, Gedenk die 6 Millionen, remember the 6 million. And that was something that was impressed on me as a baby boomer from the very beginning, that was part of our history, part of our culture was affected by the tragedy of the Holocaust. So it's things like that were the Jewish connection for me. And ironically, until Nella and I had those conversations she was talking about, never really talked much about the religious aspect of what it meant to be a Jew religiously. But there was no doubt that I knew I was a Jew culturally.
Greg, go ahead.
Yes. And while my wife does her chores, and she's a Jew by choice, and like Yehuda, I'm a Jew by no choice, because my parents were both Jewish, and we were sent to Hebrew school. I had my bar mitzvah, but I left before confirmation because I wanted to play a lot of sports. But I think I was impressed with how important it was to my parents, who I revered, worship my father. He was just a fantastic man. But when his father passed away when I was in fourth grade. My grandpa, Harry, he went every day to shul for a year, to say the mourner's Kaddish. And then his brother died shortly after that, a big tragedy. And he went for another year when I was in fifth grade, getting up while I'm still sleeping and going to late to fill in. And he got good enough where he could lead the service. I was never that good, but he would talk about any famous person. He would say, "Did you know that guy's Jewish?" And so a lot of show business people and comedians. And if they made my dad laugh, then I would love them. Or Sammy Davis Jr., my mom and dad loved him. And he was Jewish by choice. And then Trish and I, yeah, that's my greatest Jewish accomplishment is Trish, who was a lot like Nella. She wasn't buying the Jesus thing, and she was buying God, though. She believes in Hashem. So Judaism came pretty easily to her, and yet we have a lot to learn. And I think that Judaism is a gift for all of us. We can open it whenever we want, and that's part of opening it right now. Thanks to Aviva and Yehuda for doing this. It's also our tsuris, right? We're all in the same soup as proven by events throughout history. So we may as well get to know what the soup is all about.
You. I guess I can go. Oh, go ahead, David.
Okay, no, okay, thank you, Viva. Yeah, similar story to Nella in some ways. In my background, I do have Mitzrahi there, and I had my bris, but never had a bar mitzvah, and didn't really grow up in the Jewish milieu in that way. But in college, I got a little more involved, and especially as part of my studied Ivrit, some Ivrit, as for international relations, and then made several trips over my adulthood to the land, and really more often drawn more to the language of Hebrew. But then now, as I get older, wanting to be more involved with what it means to be culturally that way, what it means to worship and be engaged in the services in the community. So that's where I'm coming at it now.
Cool.
I don't actually have a clear way to explain this, but leaving Israel, I grew up in Israel, leaving Israel at the age of 11, I think perpetually put me in an outsider status wherever I was. So from a very young age, wherever I was living, when I was in the US, I was an Israeli in the US. And when I was in Israel, I was an American in Israel. And it took me many years to understand that Jewish is just who I am. It's not a matter of choice. It's not anything. It's every way that my world was shaped comes through Judaism. And it's clear when you're in Israel, it's very clear because everything all around you is both understandable and enigmatic at the same time. And that's all okay. That feeling of not having exact answers, it's okay. The feeling of not having an exact identity, it's okay. And that is the most Jewish thing about being Jewish to me, is that all of that is, I understand for me, what it is to be Jewish. And I think that we spend a lot of time talking about these things and assuring ourselves that in our tradition, this tradition of questioning is kind of what it's all about. And the idea of understanding that in the Jewish tradition, that grappling with questions is the tradition rather than asserting answers. And I've found that as I've gotten older, I need a community of people around me who feel the same way. It doesn't mean that we agree on things. It means that we agree that that's the substance of life. And aren't we lucky that in our tradition, that is the tradition? So we have thousands of years of that tradition to lean into and see how that's actually done. So I don't know if I explained it, but that's what it is to me.
Vic, did you want to go?
You have to unmute if you do. Or you can just rant without unmuting.
You have to unmute. Vic.
Yeah, Vic, unmute.
Judaism in my family was when we were all small. They light candles for Hanukkah and that kind of thing, and then it for this reason or that everything kind of disappeared, and I took to just wandering around. You could hop on a train, or you could hitchhike down the highway, and but I didn't never learn anything about Judaism, and I had a bar mitzvah, but I ended up walking out because there just was nothing there that I knew about, and then slowly, catch as catch can, I started picking up pieces of Judaism here and there, and it is a really nice religion. There's a lot of thought going on. There's a lot of things going on, but I didn't know anything about them. But I just, you just go down over here and then learn something new, and you go over there and you learn something new. And eventually, it started clicking in. It was a time, and there was a reason. And I slowed down. Now I know what some of the things are.
I just want to clarify, it's not a must for everyone to speak. It's only if you want to. But being that as it may, and we have a couple more subjects, I want to see if Marshall or Trish want to unmute and speak.
Well, I might say a few words, and usually it's rare for me to stop at a few. First thing I'll mention is my mother's father was a Greenspan, so I don't know if there's any relationship. My father, when my mother and he got married, changed his family name from Bilansky to Bland because he wanted to teach in the Los Angeles Public School District. And with the name Bilansky, he said they wouldn't hire him except maybe to teach art. So that sets the time in a big, understanding city like Los Angeles. Okay, so there was no religion really discussed in the family. I didn't know about it till I was coming up on 13, and my father said, "You want to take 2 buses after school and go study Hebrew so you can be bar mitzvahed?" And I said, "Thanks very much. I got homework." So I didn't have any religious training. When my second wife, Carolyn Parrish, and I, after retirement, moved to the Big Island. My wife, who had gone to religious schools, Church of England, said, "Oh, Kona Beth Shalom is having meetings. I'd like to join so I can have a little religion, which I miss." What she really was saying was she wanted me to understand my religion a little bit. So we went there and met wonderful, talented people. Wonderful experience. I got to appreciate a little bit what was in the religion. I'd always been very proud of the people because I was aware of the people and the great contributions they've made in all areas of our society. But anyway, I got to know the people at KBS. I met a young doctor who joined when he first came in from New York and worked with him a little bit when he wanted to get elected to the state legislature. And as you all probably know, he's moved up a little bit now. So he's governor now. So that was an earlier member of KBS.
Oh.
Anyway, Madame Pele ate out my lungs while we were there, so we moved back to the mainland for a while, San Diego. Now we're back on Oahu, hoping we're far enough from Madame Pele to survive. But it's been wonderful, and I've of course always been very proud to be a member of that religion. I know that's who it is. The four grandparents all immigrated around the turn of the century before, early early part. So that's who I am, but I don't know very much about the religion to this day. My wife, Church of England, can tell you so much more about it. She's brighter than I am. Thanks very much, guys. Great,
Hey,
great.
we're all here because we're learners.
Yeah. Trish, did you want to say anything?
No, I'm her attorney and I speak for her.
Okay.
I do it pro bono. Okay.
Okay. At any time, if Trish wants to.
She knows how to do it.
Okay. So now we'll move to the next, this way. Okay. When you think about yourself in the present, what aspects of who you are come from Judaism? I'll leave that up for a few minutes. I'll take the easy way out and just say everything.
Yeah.
That's a cop out.
Well, you speak Hebrew.
No, but that's been my great aha moment, that it is everything.
I was going to say everything, but I don't think I'm as committed as you. So I'll say a lot of the time.
The question is not about commitment so much as just what is it about you? Just as the question is.
I think I wrestle with current events and try to come up with solutions and answers when it's really difficult to see a light at the end of the tunnel, but we persist.
I think we're committed to arguing with each other. And I think that we love to do that. It's, case law came from the Torah. And we love to do that. We love the conversation. That's one of the reasons why we created this gathering place, because we like to talk to each other and not necessarily agree with each other, but learn from each other. And I think that's just such a Jewish thing for me. That's, I used to teach a class in debate, and that was specifically because of being a Jew.
I'm almost I was a little bit confused by the question, and I'm trying to unwrangle the question because it's so integrated with, even when Yehuda said he had no choice, and some of us always start having no choice. And only looking back in retrospect, my parents and my family respected the value of education. You're supposed to question, you want to learn to be independent, you want to be responsible, not just to yourself, but to the community. Do those have to be intrinsically Jewish values?
No, but it's
not necessarily, but in fact they are. And then when you look around, and then when you study Torah, justice, shall thou pursue, prosecutor Silverman.
Thank you.
It just all of a sudden it's there, like you said, Aviva, but it's there. And then when you stop and think about it, it really is, in a lot of ways, it is everything.
Yeah. Who are you?
That is not to say that people can't be intellectual.
Now. What aspects of you now are reflected out to the greater community when you think of yourself
okay.
now?
Well, I wouldn't say that it's exclusively, but now when I think my concern about justice and fairness, and I studied before crazy things happened in my life, and I wanted to work in the public sector and affect public policy to improve social welfare. And I look around, and you know, it just seems like such a Jewish thing to do. In terms of, back to my thing about, especially as an American Jew, some disproportionately, so many Jews in America are the ones at the forefront of trying to, you know, make that union ever more perfect from what started from a bunch of Puritans in a way, but all those guys who, the founding fathers who loved the Bible, they read the Old Testament probably more than they even read the New Testament, you know. So it's a foundational thing there. Yeah.
I want to follow up on something or tag on what Craig said, and again, I'll go back to my Yiddish school background, and there's a song, the Partisaner Lied, that was about the song of the partisans in Europe in World War II, and the refrain of the song is "Wir seien da," we are here, and that I think is the sense that I get is that we don't hide our Jewishness. We are proud to say that if you come to the door, you see a mezuzah on the door. You will see a menorah on the shelf. It's not something that we do behind the curtains. We are proud of who we are. And in fact, I remember when in 1990 we moved to Los Angeles. Our daughter was a teenager, and our son was 10, I guess, 10 or 11 when we moved. And I remember hearing on the news a report about some crime that happened, and the detective that they had a very specifically Jewish name, something like Goldfarb. And I thought, this is wonderful that the kids are going to hear that there are Jews in their community who are doing this, and their names are identifiable, at least to our ears, as Jewish names. But the fact is, we are part of the community, and that's, I think, how that the background is reflected in how I feel today. Is that my Jewishness is something that is part of me, and it's you know me, you have to accept that.
Do you want me to move to the next slide? Oh, I'm giving everyone an
Oh,
opportunity
I
to
got to tell
speak.
you, Alan's answer was perfect, because I think that's, you come into our house too and you see all those things. And I remember years ago visiting the Jewish Museum in New York, and they had a diorama of Jewish houses through the ages, and you click on a button and you see there's the same exact set of Jewish artifacts of Judaica in every single house across the centuries. And that's part of how we do it, you know, from the mezuzah when you first walk in. You know, I mean, we had someone who was looking at the apartment downstairs, and we put a mezuzah in the apartment we rent. And this guy immediately noticed it.
So I want people to speak.
Alan, you're muted.
Oh yeah, Alan, you're muted. We missed all that good
I mean,
stuff.
that was
Sorry,
Craig.
Craig.
I think it was Craig. Wrong Silverman.
Sorry.
Right. No, but that's the point. Once my kid said, "What's a Jewish last name?" I said Silverman. That's all you got to know. So Alan and I tend to have a lot of choice, but I appreciate that compliment about tzedek. And there's a lot of stereotyping that Jews are doctors or lawyers. Well, think about it. Lawyers, if we do it right, are part of the justice system. And I tried to do justice, and I still am toward the end of my career. But I have a cousin Ariella, who's married to a remarkable doctor in Denver named Michael Molofsky, and they are Orthodox, and he doesn't hide it at all. And he's prominent on social media as a pediatrician, but he gets a lot of feedback about you're a Jew, this or that. And he put out a remarkable thing on Facebook that I put in the chat where he said, and he's laying tefillin while he says, yeah, I'm a doctor. And let me tell you why so many Jews are doctors and why so many Jews are in the healing profession, because that's our highest value. And boy, it's powerful. And I put it in the chat, and I'm honored that he's my cousin.
All right. Anybody else want to address this topic or?
It was wonderful.
Yeah. Eva, go ahead.
It's not nearly as erudite. I agree with so many of you, but I do think it's my personality. And I think, why do Jews like being with other Jews? Because in so many ways we are so similar. All the characteristics and qualities have been mentioned. Oh, and as my son says about me in particular, we are a verbal people. So we talk and analyze, and
Years of tradition of arguing the same points over and over and looking for clarification that never ends. I'd say so, yeah. Yehuda, I'm leaving it up to you. Do you want
Sure,
to try
just
to
go
go
to the
through all the
next question.
slides?
We have a limited amount of time. We have to respect people's
Yeah,
time.
I know. So next slide is,
I think you can move on from this one.
I think so too. Oh, wait. Okay, have you sought to strengthen your understanding of Jewish identity as you have lived your life? How have you done it?
This is Heather. I've just been trying to, oh my gosh, I heard cookies everywhere. I've been trying to learn something new constantly about Judaism, about Halakha, about Kabbalah, anything to strengthen my Jewish practice. Mezuzahs on my doors and my siddur, and I have this deep need to keep learning so I can just fill my life with Jewishness, I guess.
Boy, we share that with you. You come around to this house and there are books all over the place, and half of them, as much as we like to read about everything, so much of it is just stuff that has to do with being a Jew.
Oh, Barry has joined us.
You
Barry,
can flash that question at him again.
okay, I'm going to flash the question we're on right now. Have you sought to strengthen your understanding of Jewish identity as you've lived your life? How have you done it? We've gone through a few questions, but this is where we are, so join in anytime.
I guess I will just say what I have done is I have expanded upon the tradition that was given to me. Listening to some of the people's backgrounds, which is wonderful. I want to ask Vic. I didn't hear. Where did you grow up, Vic?
Oh, wow.
Bay Area.
Okay. To the degree I was inculcated with the more orthodox way of doing things because my grandparents, my mother's parents especially, were right there. And when my mom's sister was widowed young, we were practically an extended family all the time, and we did everything together. And even to Alan's point, like some degree, like partly we wanted to stay home from school, and we lived in the Jewish part of a broadly Jewish suburb of Cleveland, which is a relatively Jewish city, and it has a very strong Jewish background. So it was all right there for me. And then I was a good little kid, and I liked to sing, and I was the cantor's favorite, and so we stayed home for every holiday and the second day of Sukkot and all that, any of that stuff, as long as we went to synagogue, and we did. And I loved all those traditions. And then, of course, you go off on your own, first of all, and then I decided to go to Brandeis University because my Jewish heritage meant something to me. I mean, I didn't go there just because it was founded by Jews, but the fact that it was founded as a secular institution under Jewish auspices, and that derived out of the fact, ironically, that Harvard and Columbia and all the Ivy Leagues discriminated against Jews. So it gave me a comfort zone. I never had to worry until I went to graduate school to choose between going to class or going to high holiday services, and then that was kind of like a big because I had to balance that. And I do consider myself an American. I didn't even get a chance to even go to Israel until just a few years ago. I don't think I would want to make Aliyah, but I'm glad Israel is there. But my big aha moment is that was part of who I was, and like you all say, like Alan said, I would never deny that I was a Jew. I used to say, some people say, "Oh, you're blonde hair, blue eyed, you could pass or whatever." I would never deny my Judaism, ever. And yet, the turning point for me was when my father died. Not even as I didn't lose him as soon as a lot of you on the screen, but I didn't understand why. I thought my father was taken too young. Why did that happen? And what was my relationship with God or with a deity, or because I culturally identified as a Jew. My grandparents and family that I came from, that I followed in their footsteps, were observant. Were they observant only because their parents were observant? I think to a certain degree, yes, and they grew up in a different time. But I said, what is my relation? I wouldn't deny being a Jew, but then I said, so many of these things I do as a Jew has to do with my relationship to Hashem, and I didn't know what it was. Why, so I had to really look at that, and that's when I started going on a spiritual quest that in a lot of ways took me away from Judaism and then brought me back to it. And so I've been trying to maintain that stronger connection and even more of the observable connection instead of just the community familial connection.
Well, I will speak for a lot of the people on this screen that one of the main things that's happened with me is we have met hundreds of times to study Torah together. Literally, we're in our 6th cycle through, and many, many people on this screen have been involved with that. And that up front answers this question more than most things that I have done, even though we've always done Shabbat. But, and we collect Judaica, but the active learning is just a prize. And it's amazing that you can read the same passage every single year and the words are the same and we have changed. And it's just, and just embracing that whole thing. And it's one of the high points of my week. I don't want to ever miss having Torah study with you all.
Yeah.
I would.
Okay,
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Alan.
No, Viva, please. You.
No, go ahead. I was changing the subject.
I would say it's for me. It's been seeking out the community. I give you one anecdote that was I think a turning point or a changing point in my life when I was in the Army in 1966. Basic training at Fort Dix, New Jersey, a wonderful place not to go to if you're ever in that part of the country. But we had very early in basic training, we were all brought from various companies into the base theater, about 2,000 troops, guys with newly shaven haircuts and ill-fitting fatigues. And it was our religious orientation. And the sergeant who was in charge called out that all of the Catholic students, Catholic GIs, you're going to have you're going to go to the Catholic chapel and you will have your orientation there. All the Protestants, you will stay here. Will all the Jewish personnel stand up? And I looked around, I stood up and I looked around, and there were about 3 other guys in this group of 2,000. And I thought, why? First of all, why were we asked to stand up? But second of all, they said, why? And he said, well, you're going to have your orientation this evening at the chaplain's house, so you can go back to the barracks. But it really gave me a sense of the fact that we are not a large part of the community. And so it brought to mind the opportunities that I've had over the years in different places that we've lived, when I was in the Army, even when I was in Korea in the Army, of seeking out the Jewish community where I could find it, not necessarily to worship, because that was never really a big part of my life, but to be with fellow Jews was really important. And I think that's what it brought me, as the question asked, how it manifested itself in my life today.
Vic, go ahead.
Actually, I've um, gone in the same kind of a pattern as we're in that we do here. I moved to Oregon, and there was a doctor in the VA hospital, and he came around and found us all, and between us we started a congregation, and we'd have Pesach, and and people and Yom Kippur, and um, that's where I learned to blow the shofar, and then I moved out of there, and I moved to Juneau and got into there's a thriving Jewish community in Juneau. The salmon has people has Jews coming from New York, and our salmon is going back to New York for Greek Kippur. And I ended up, doing my turn as president of the congregation, and we didn't meet regularly because the fishing seasons, and Juneau is a funny place because you got in the summer you got to make enough money to get through the winter, and so I was at that, and then I think I moved to here after that, and then it was the same kind of thing. We just sat down, and Jews showed up, and here we are.
Go ahead, Barry.
I started my life in Brooklyn in the Jewish neighborhood. And so I went to Hebrew school, and I enjoyed Hebrew school for the most part, and I enjoyed learning stuff about the history, and I enjoyed learning the language. It wasn't spoken Hebrew, it was prayer book Hebrew, but I enjoyed it as a foreign language. And then when I went to college, I was less involved. I didn't know how many, I went to Columbia, and I didn't get any sense of anti-Semitism there. And I didn't hang out, it turns out I hung out with a lot of Jews, but I didn't seek them as Jews. They just happened to be my friends. And the same thing happened in Rochester, and there weren't that many. But I noticed that when I was away from home, I was more attracted to doing Jewish than I would when I was at home. And I went to Jewish summer camps. And then the first rabbi that turned me on to Judaism as being lively and fun was when I was in the Peace Corps. This is 1968, and it was in Thailand. And this guy was a 24-year-old graduate of Yale Law School who was an Orthodox rabbi, and he was fun. We would go to services regularly because, again, I'm far away from home, so I was seeking some connection with home, and being Jewish was some connection with home. And he was a real delight. He used to go around and visit the troops, and the first time I learned that there's different degrees of unkosherness. So if you're, eating on a plate in Thailand, obviously the plate is treif. But if you're eating cold food doesn't absorb treifness as much as hot food does. So if he was eating out in a restaurant, he would eat cold food. In his own house, he could eat hot food. And he was married to, the Rebbitzin was a young woman who was a rabbi's daughter. She had never been free of her family ever. And in Thailand, she wore micro mini skirts, and she had teardrops painted on her face, and she was outrageous. And the rabbi was outrageous also. He had the best dope in town if we wanted to get any. So it was a wonderful exposure to the joy of Judaism. And then after that, I did my training, I guess, at Stanford, and I was not that interested in Jewish things. I would just go for high holidays. But then I met Joseph and Nathan, and you've all met Nathan Siegel. And he just opened me up to the real super duper joy of Judaism. And that was profound for me. But it was not book learning. When we had services, there were no books. We didn't use prayer books. We didn't have a Torah scroll. The brothers just chanted, and we all chanted with them, and we danced, and we hugged each other, and men hugged women, and women hugged men, and it was just this. It's like the House of Love and Prayer that Shlomo Kalbach started in San Francisco, and that was profound for me. But I was not connected with a shul over there, except for Shabbos Shul, Nathan's place, except for my daughter's bat mitzvah. And then when we moved here, I checked out the local scene here, Kona Beth Shalom, and occasionally, but not regular, semi-regularly, I went to services. They had a phone tree. They would call everybody up. They were afraid to publish the list of Jews because they were afraid that Saddam Hussein would find out about us and come after us. So we just called each other before Shabbat. We met once a month at the Salvation Army. And I was there. I was sitting there in the. I told the story before, but I was sitting there when the treasurer came up to me because she saw me. I was sitting there reading the book, and I seemed to know the prayers. And she says, "You Jewish?" I said, "Yeah." She says, "You want to be president?" Oh no, she said, "You're a doctor?" I said, "Yeah." "You want to be president?" I said, "No, but thank you very much." The president then was another doctor. But years later, I joined the board and I got interested. And Michael Zola inveigled me to take on the role of presidency. Being active with Kona Beth Shalom caused me to learn more about Judaism because I had to know enough. I had to, be one page ahead of the congregation if we're doing something. So I did my best to do that, and that was great fun and really satisfying. And a lot of the Jews in the congregation then were absolutely non-religious Jews. I mean, they were all socialists and communists. They were all Yiddishists.
Barry, I want to thank you for bringing us to this part of your what you're telling us, because that's kind of where we started with subjects, and this is the third of the questions. But where you brought us to right now is actually a good place to start to sum up, because what we're doing, and you missed the beginning, is we're using this conversation to choose the subjects that we will study together. And what we wanted to know is exactly that trajectory is, why are we here? Why are all of us here on the screen? We all are here for a different reason. There's some shared reasons. There's something going on in general Judaism that we are a part of, in the trends both of moving away from organized community, but also seeking community. And it's a hallmark of Jewish times in history that caused great changes. So you brought us there very nicely right now. And I wanted to know if anybody else wanted to address that question. And Yehuda, what do you think? The last question, leave it for next time, or?
No, I think now is the time for us to gather subjects that people want to be the content of future classes, where we'll focus on those particular things.
So I want to just clarify two things. First of all, I put our email in the chat because I never really thought about how to organize, how we communicate. So for now, if anything comes, Alan, to the KBS website, just go ahead and forward it. I put our family email because Yehuda's more reliable at looking at email throughout the day. And that's our next task. I have a number of suggestions, but there's some common themes, and that's what I was hoping to draw out of today. So just for the fun of it, let me share that. I think there was one more question. Is that right, Yehuda?
You can.
What do you want to learn as a community to further our knowledge and sense of belonging? So that was the last.
And that is the
slide on
gathering.
there.
That's the gathering of subjects.
Right. And we actually arrived at this spot nicely. And we can, if anybody has things they want to say now, it's a good time. I've got a notebook, I'm writing. And I can also just briefly, from my research on how to go about this, I did cruise a bunch of other Judaism 101 like uh, places. And I found out that most of the time Judaism 101 as a subject is offered specifically to converts or families who are blended families, but also more recently to Jews like us who feel like things have fallen kind of far away and we're ready to reclaim our Judaism. So from that, if there's anything, any subject that anyone here on the screen in particular has as something that's really important to them, you can go ahead and mention it.
By the way, I want to mention something that Sarah Hurwitz, the first book that we read for the book club was Sarah Hurwitz's book, Here All Along. And she basically talks about, this trajectory of how she grew up, where they just had a few holidays. They lit the candles in Hanukkah. They might have gone to services once or twice for Rosh Hashanah evening and for Yom Kippur called Nidre. And other than that, they didn't do much of anything. And then they were bar bat mitzvah. Not all of them even were. And she said, she basically says, and then they dropped the ball. And the reality is that's the opening. And then all of a sudden you're not doing anything. And she said she rediscovered that literally Judaism has 2,500 years of amazing resource. There's probably not another, following spirituality that has anything like what Judaism has. So the content that we are going to study together is going to come from those resources because they're amazing.
Craig?
And I think it's good that you two are the leaders because your knowledge is so much deeper than ours, although we can all contribute in our own way. And Barry and Kona Beth Shalom welcomed me. And early on, I remember Barry saying, nobody comes to Kona to be more Jewish, but I disagree.
That's Aviva's quote.
Right, but I wanted to object right then because I don't go to services or Torah study when I was in Colorado. This is really the first time since I'm approaching retirement and since I've moved far and away. And let's face it, we're all going through these traumatic world and American and Israeli events together. So that makes us turn to our faith. So I think what I want more than anything is wisdom and Jewish lessons for how to deal with the modern world.
Wonderful.
So I just want to make a big disclaimer. I'm sitting here surrounded by piles of books, panicking at how much can I absorb? But what I'm finding is the more I say, I am a Jew, I am Jewish, and one of the next times we talk, we are going to talk about what that means, just historically and just verbally. And I'm glad actually, David, being a studier, that you might actually help me with this subject. But there's no good answer to that. But what I'm finding is that every aspect of my life I see through the lens of being a Jew. And whatever that means, I'm still unpacking, but on that, I'm clear. So I don't know more than you do. I probably know less than you do because I didn't have the American Jewish experience of going to synagogue and, Jewish day camps and all that. But I'm still pretty clear about the kind of overriding lens through which I see the world. And I think we share that in different ways. I know I spent a year of studying with Courtney, and Courtney enlightened me in so many ways. But what I really thought we shared, regardless of who we are and how different our experience is that there is this lens through which we see the world Jewishly, and it works in every aspect of our life, because that's the nature of Judaism and what it is. It's not just a religion. It's not just a peoplehood. It's not just an anything. It is really the lens through which we see the world. So from there, that's my starting point. I guarantee that you know more than me on more Jewish subjects than I care to admit, probably all of you, but we're doing this together.
So does
And
anybody have any things that they would like to study in more depth? That Aviva and I will set up sessions based on what you guys are interested in.
Go ahead, Ruth Ellen.
Yeah, it's hard for me to articulate, but I'm listening to everybody, and this is the same conundrum I had when my father died. Because, I always just say, nobody asks you, are you, an Irish Catholic? I got to word this better. I would like to discuss as a group the dichotomy, it's not a paradox, I don't know what it is, of how can one be a Jew and not worship a God? I mean, even everybody said they did it for the community, and what a big, they're in a small community, but what did these guys do? They had a Yom Kippur service. What did these people do? And then I look in the community and I notice sometimes I get a little frustrated because what does everybody turn out for? Hanukkah, which is, especially if they're in the diaspora, in the Western, because it's fun, because it doesn't take a lot of work, I think when we talk about justice and fairness and a lot of the stuff that we're all going through, seeing bad people doing bad things, and some of the people doing the bad things happen to be members of our tribe, and because nobody's immune from that. But how? God, I'm sorry. I'm getting tired and I lost my train of thought. But I mean, because this is what I really struggle with. And I love, when Yehuda says, when he talks about his background and everything, and when he came out and the Torah study a couple years ago, he says, well, I don't believe in God. I don't know what I do believe there's some kind of higher energy or universal energy that we're all part of. And I love what I'm discovering is every religion has they have a notion of that one way or the other, but the Jewish way is really beautiful. Oh, that's what I was going to say. In some ways, honest to goodness, wanting to have justice and being in America and all that, in some ways, to be a 100% complete Jew, one argument could be that you'd have to live in a theocracy.
So actually, everything you're saying is an entire subject. And we will have that as a subject, but I want to hear Heather right now.
I wrote it down. Down.
Thank you.
It's a good question. It's a good.
Go ahead, Heather.
Okay. Well, for me,
We'll never answer.
God is very important in my life. So for me personally, I would like to become more observant, and I need to know how to do that. I understand I have praying twice a day, but I understand we're supposed to be praying 3 times a day. And all these kind of little things I get confused on, which siddur to use, how much do I read, what do I do? I just want to become more observant because I have a very close relationship with God.
Great one. Wonderful. Thank you.
I would hope that some of the things that come out of these discussions would help us figure out how to bring our children, grandchildren into the kind of sharing and belief that we have. And it's not that you want them to blindly follow just because you're a Jew and you have to do these things, but to want to be part of the community. And I think it's probably the dilemma that's been faced by our people, and certainly any immigrant group, but our people over the centuries in the different places that we've had to live, that it's been harder and harder to retain some of that Jewishness, the Yiddishkeit that we're kind of dancing around trying to come up with definitions of. But what I keep thinking of is, I know it's one of Aviva's favorite expressions, Lador Vador. How do we go generation to generation? How do we ensure that when we're gone, it will continue?
And I will read a quote. This quote is by Arthur Kurzweil, and later on we'll talk about who he is. But he is a studied with Adin Steinsaltz. So he's very conservative, he's Orthodox, and he says, the writer of this book says, he believes that too many of us have blended in or assimilated by default, opting for an anything goes Judaism that isn't Judaism. He says, I don't know who said it originally, but I think it's a great analogy. Baseball has 4 bases. You can invent a game with 5 bases. Maybe it's even a better game, but it's not baseball. And so
baseball has 3 bases. I want you to know.
A home.
We know the guy.
No, home is called a base. Home is
Home
base.
base. Home base.
But I want to say that really irked me. That really irked me because I feel exactly the opposite. And I feel like that is a real conflict when we say, first you have to be this, do that, or believe in that in order to be Jewish. That is what I think has caused a lot of us to move away and not find it relevant. And I think those are personal things, and we each approach Judaism differently, and that is to me the interest I have.
I think what we're asking is for you to each examine within your own mind, just like Heather did. What is it that you uniquely would be interested in going deeper into? And I'm writing everything down that you guys are saying.
Yeah. Barry had his hand up. Go ahead.
So I think one of the most destructive discussions is how to be a good Jew. And I think that if anybody brings that question up, we need to take them aside and have a little private one-on-one or 12-on-1 discussion with that person, but not put that into the overall discussion.
Right, and I wanted to point out that that's part of how we are talking now. So we are each speaking for ourselves, and we're not making judgments on Judaism as a whole, which is why I read that quote, because I thought isn't that a turnoff to anybody wanting to actually connect with Judaism.
So the challenge is how to be Jewish in a way that is meaningful to you, that fits with some tradition, some non-tradition. I think how to make it interesting to the next generation, or even if not the next generation, our children, it could be, for me, everybody's the next generation.
Yeah.
Other adults who have said to me, I'm not that interested in being Jewish. And yet there is something about it. Arnie has been a member of the Kona community for longer than I have. And this is the very first time that I've seen Arnie start to participate with KBS, and he's very Jewish. And he's no less Jewish than anybody else, any of the rabbis visiting. So how do you excite people to do that? Then, of course, the next question is, why bother exciting somebody? Why do I need to make somebody else to be Jewish? Well, it's very simple. I happen to like to hang out with Jews. So if there's more Jews around, I'm going to be happier because I have more friendly people that I can hang out with. So when I meet somebody at the beach and I find out that they're Jewish, I say, so no, why don't you move here?
Okay, so what I want to do is sum up. Everything that came up today is part of what in one way or another, we're going to address all the things that came up. But for next month, there will be a subject, and we will send out the subject ahead of time. I want to make clear that there's no necessity to read anything in advance, although that's the best part of it, to kind of self-educate in a way that you say there's no judgment on it. So I also put in the chat that one of the things that I hope we get out of this group, I know that a number of people here have turned me on to different podcasts, movies, TV shows, different things. I think I want this to be a group that shares those kinds of things. Out of that comes great conversation. But for next month, we will have a subject in the same format where we want everyone to speak without, there's no right or wrong or lack of knowledge or anything that goes with this. Okay, that's the understanding.
And we will appreciate feedback at all.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Is this
so
going to
for
be on the
now,
test? Is this going to be on the test?
yes.
As
I
one of
have
the
a
tests
question,
in my
Aviva.
What was that?
I have a question.
Yes.
It's a little more controversial, but what is off the table in this discussion?
Okay, good question. First of all, I just want to acknowledge that this is not Torah study, so I'm giving it Hawaiian time. We started 5 minutes late and we went 10 minutes over. That's about the length it's going to be. I don't think there's anything off the table. Because if something comes onto the table, we will make it into a subject. In other words, if someone wants to bring up Israeli politics, we are not going to argue Israeli politics. We'll say, oh, that might be next month's subject. So it'll include a little bit of history and maybe suggested listenings, and then we will discuss it. So that's how I envision that. We're not going to delve into subjects that are difficult, but we will make them into subjects that we will actually discuss. Because I'm more interested in hearing what other people have to say than what I have to say. But I find that if we open it up to just, a controversial subject, it kind of loses the magic of studying together, which is what the goal of this is for me.
I was just with a question once a month, and we all have to agree we're going to live to be 500.
Well, look, we can do it any other way. For me, this is really not any trouble. I will tell you that some of the things that I listed actually address every single thing that somebody brought up here. Okay. But next week we will clarify a few things like terminology. And then then I will discuss and see whoever sends us ideas, and we'll come up with a subject for next month. And we want to have the subject available ahead of time. So if anybody does want to read or say, oh, I heard a good podcast, or, I read a book or whatever, that you can.
Oh, wait, now I'm getting a little confused, but this is going to happen once a week, but you're going to have a different.
No,
No.
this kind of meeting will be once a month for now. We can do more. I make no other plans for Mondays other than this kind of stuff, but we'll start this way.
It'll be the first Monday of every month.
Oh, okay. First Monday of every month. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Awesome.
So Yehuda and Aviva, compared to what you planned, I mean, how did we do? I mean,
We got to the fourth question.
Did the things that came up, the things that you kind of predicted might come up?
Yeah, so
mean,
actually, let's say this is officially done for those who don't want to be impolite but need to go, because we said it'd be about an hour, but I'm staying on. And
Thank
then
you. I have to go, but
Yeah.
thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
And Aviva, if you'd like, if you see since you're the host, if you see on the upper right-hand corner of your screen where it says custom streaming
Yeah.
service,